Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
We're about an hour away from the State of the Union. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and we'll have President Joe Biden's speech live on all platforms tonight. It starts at 6. The PBS NewsHour team will take over at that time here on KPBS television. You can also stream the speech live at kpbs.org and listen live on KPBS FM. There will be some local faces in the crowd, including an East County man invited by San Diego Congressman Scott Peters. KPBS military reporter Andrew Dyer has his story.
Ramat Mokhtar served with the U.S. Marines as an interpreter for 6 years during the war in Afghanistan. He immigrated to the United States on a special immigrant visa in 2016 and settled in El Cajon. In 2021, when the U.S. left the country and it fell to the Taliban, he volunteered with Afghan Evac, a coalition working to help former U.S.-allied Afghans flee. Now, they're working to get Congress to pass the Afghan Adjustment Act, a bill that would provide those Afghans with permanent legal status in the U.S.
They're at the limbo right now. There's no, I think there's no pathway for them.
Mokhtar will join San Diego Congressman Scott Peters, a co-sponsor of the bipartisan Afghan Adjustment Act, at the State of the Union. Peters says America's credibility is on the line if something isn't done for the Afghans who helped the U.S.
The reason I took this up is not just because it's important to stand by our allies, which it is, but it's important to stand by our veterans who, this was their war, this was their effort, and these are the people that fought next to them and with them.
The Afghan Adjustment Act was introduced in both chambers of Congress late last year, but was unable to find a majority of support.
Frankly, it's remarkable to me that there's been adjustment acts for all the other conflicts we've had, where we've taken care of people in this kind of situation, and we haven't done it for Afghans.
There's nothing more bipartisan or nonpartisan than this issue.
Sean Van Diver is a San Diego Navy veteran who serves as president and board chair of Afghan Evac.
This issue is so important not just to veterans of our military. It's important to our frontline civilians, folks who served in and out of uniform overseas, our aid workers, and our wartime allies, because this is about the very idea of America, about the value of America's word. When we make a promise, when we make a commitment, when we go in and we say we're going to do something, then we got to follow through.
Mokhtar says the bill would mean freedom, safety, and survival for the tens of thousands of Afghans still in limbo today.
I think the Afghan Adjustment Act for all the Afghans who made here means one thing. That means a fate. That means like a tomorrow. That means a clear future, you know?
Peters says he'll again introduce the Afghan Adjustment Act in the House this month. Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
What are young people hoping to hear in the State of the Union speech? We sent KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer to find out.
We spoke with students at college campuses around San Diego about the State of the Union address. And the one thing that all students agreed on, they don't plan to watch it, and they're okay with that.
I mean, I know what it is, but I've never actually listened to it or cared about it, really.
Many of the students said they get their news through social media rather than sitting through an hour-long speech. But there are issues they care about, like gun control, health care, and fixing economic instability. They also care about climate change and
debt relief. Obviously, I'm very pro that because of being a student. I am in a lot of student debt.
UC San Diego student Georgia Day says she paid more attention to these types of events during the Trump presidency.
I guess like things used to be a lot more like inflammatory and polarizing.
Students at San Diego State University also said gun reform is front of mind, but so are social justice issues, including race and gender.
I'd say as a black person, you know, just there's a lot of police brutality going on still. I mean, it's calmed down a bit, but like, you know, race in America is a big issue.
At Miramar College, Joseph Burkhalter told us he cares more about what happens on a local level.
I do care about, like, you know, minimum wage, stuff like that, like finances, not being able to live in San Diego and not have to like spend an arm and a leg, you know.
Biden is set to take the stage at 6 p.m. at the Capitol to deliver the speech. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
Janitorial workers were back in front of the county supervisor's building today, ready to strike if their union is not recognized. Kitty Alvarado updates us on where things stand.
The 2-week cooling off period between the county contractor Nova and the janitorial workers is up, but things were just heating up for the janitorial workers who pulled out all the stops in front of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors building.
We need them to honor the workers' voice in all of the county of San Diego by honoring their union or get out of San Diego.
The workers had planned to walk out in January, but agreed to hold off after County Supervisor Chair Nora Vargas promised to help. Since then, Nova was found in violation of labor code for retaliating against workers who wanted to form a union. Those workers got their jobs back with back pay.
She said she was going to fight and she was going to get this cooling off period to make it right. Well, guess what? Making it right is not just getting the workers who got fired back to their job. That's the bare minimum. These workers need a voice and they need a union.
Also at the protest was Sofia Martinez, a janitorial worker who was just reinstated. A county investigation found she was the victim of retaliation when she was forced to scrape chemical-soaked floors for 8 hours on her hands and knees.
I want to make sure that what happened to me never happens to any of my fellow janitors or any of my coworkers again.
Y darle las gracias a todos y viva el sindicato y vivan todos los que nos apoyan.
And I just want to say to you that I want to thank you, all of you who are here supporting our fight. And I want to say, let's give it up to the janitors, que vivan los janitors, and everybody who is here supporting this just fight.
The Board of Supervisors is now considering a new request for proposals for janitorial services under a new policy that outlines how county workers are to be treated and says Nova can submit a proposal. We reached out to Nova for comment, but have not heard back. Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
More healthcare workers at La Mesa's largest employer have voted to unionize. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman has more on what's next for staff at Sharp Grossmont Hospital.
San Diego's only East County hospital has voted to unionize more than 1,400 healthcare workers. Registered nurses are already represented. This new union covers a variety of positions, including certified nursing assistants, pharmacy technicians, and respiratory therapists.
I'm walking through the hallways. People are hugging and smiling. They're excited about this.
Hava Serrano is an emergency room technician at Sharp Grossmont Hospital. He voted to join SEIU United Healthcare Workers West, and he's hoping it will bring better pay and more staff.
This isn't just about wages and staffing. This is about quality care for our patients. We have always said we'll take care of them. No matter how many come through the door, no matter what the situation is, we will always take care of our patients. But now we have this feeling of we are going to get taken care of.
Serrano and some of his coworkers spoke during a recent La Mesa City Council meeting. A resolution was passed there in support of free and fair elections at Sharp Grossmont Hospital.
I've been with Sharp since 2015. My reason for joining a union is to have a voice. I want to see changes that fill the needs for staffing, better pay, and worker safety.
The vote to unionize was 55% in favor, and it still needs to be certified by the National Labor Relations Board. After that comes elections for bargaining committees, then getting a new contract.
We're hoping that Sharp works with us and is able to, give us what we need to keep going.
Before voting ended, Sharp healthcare officials filed a claim with federal labor officials alleging intimidating and threatening organizing efforts from the union. Union officials called it a desperate attempt to influence the election and divert attention away from low wages and staffing. A Sharp spokesperson issued a statement saying they have more than 1,700 open positions, and since the pandemic, filling them has been a challenge. They maintain wages are competitive and increased staff pay late last year. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
California utility regulators are digging into reasons for this winter's high natural gas prices. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson has details.
The California Public Utilities Commission pressed industry officials to explain the record-setting price hikes for natural gas. Utility bills for San Diego Gas and Electric customers more than doubled from a year ago, and that's had a dramatic impact on some San Diego residents.
That I entirely shut my heater off. I keep all my lights off. I don't even try to put lights on.
The CPUC doesn't directly regulate natural gas, but the high rates are impacting electricity prices, which the agency does watch closely.
Frankly, we don't know all of the pieces of the puzzle, and this issue is critically important and needs to be examined further.
The collection of industry and regulatory officials agreed that prices soared because of unseasonably cold weather, which drove demand. They also noted there were pipeline constraints in the West and low storage levels before the winter season began. But the unprecedented price hike also raised questions.
Why is it that the day after Senator Bradford sent a letter to the CPUC calling for an investigation, prices were slashed in half from the $20 mark to the $10 mark? And as news was then brought on about Governor Newsom's letter being made public, now we stabilize at $5 as of yesterday.
The CPUC indicated it's in contact with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission staff to explore whether there's been any market manipulation. Meanwhile, natural gas prices fell this month, and projections hint that prices could fall again next month as demand eases. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
High energy rates are having one surprising impact on reptiles. Cold-blooded animals that require heating lamps are jacking up the heating bill for a nonprofit that helps rescue reptiles. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne has the story.
Everybody sees at a pet shop. Turtles. Our first animal can be a ball python.
The oohs and ahs of kids fill the Escondido Ecovivarium once again. KPBS visited the Reptile Museum back in 2021 when COVID had cut off all in-person visits. It also suspended all of their in-person educational field trips and replaced it with virtual ones. But seeing the kids' faces light up once again is what Susan Nowicki, the founder of the Ecovivarium, says keeps her going.
With these animals, they have that cool factor. And so the kids get really excited about learning. And if the teachers let them run with that, we can teach every single subject in school with these animals.
Nowicki says the pandemic lockdown was especially tough on her reptile sanctuary.
When you have live animals, you can't turn down the heat and everything else and just go away. You have to keep coming in every day and taking care of the animals and feeding them and cleaning them and socializing them.
Nowicki says her donations dropped by 80%, and they were denied for grants she thought they'd get. At the same time, more animals were being brought to the sanctuary.
Because of what we work with, there is a bias against these animals. And that does come into play sometimes. So we ended up not seeing the grants that we thought we would from some of those sources.
But they were able to get a loan that Nowicki used to pay her staff and feed her animals. But it didn't leave much room for larger expenses.
During that time, the utilities couldn't shut off for non-payment. And we let SDG&E know we can't pay the bill. We're doing everything we can to conserve, but we can't pay the bill.
An expense that is vital to keeping most reptiles alive. Nowicki says her bill at that time was between $2,000 to $3,000 a month.
Now our bill is $6,000 to $7,000 a month with the new rates. And we have that back balance that came due at the beginning of the year.
The back balance, $36,000. Last month, SDG&E sent the Ecovivarium a notice to pay the balance or risk disconnection. Nowicki feared this would be the last straw. But because she kept talking with SDG&E, the company gave her a 5-year payment plan.
So it's under $1,000 a month that we have to pay. But our electric bill is way up here, so now we're looking at over $7,000 a month that we have to pay, which is double what we were.
SDG&E says it's working continuously with customers and small businesses who are struggling to pay their past due bills. and is committed to finding solutions. But power isn't the only problem. Nowicki says other expenses are also on the rise.
Our food costs, some of the things have gone up 400%. And it's not like we can say, oh, we just won't buy that, because it's essential for the animal's survival. And so we try to find cost-cutting measures where we can, but there's only so much you can do.
In an effort to save on electricity, they're rotating heating lamps around the enclosures. But she says too many changes can sometimes backfire and end up costing more in vet bills. The Eco-Vivarium has set up a GoFundMe to help with the outstanding balances and possibly get them into a better location. Right now, they are operating out of an old medical office building and using every inch.
We would like every animal to have the maximum amount of space we can give, because many of them have been through horrific life stories, and they deserve that for the rest of their life.
Nowicki thinks they're keeping their promise of saving the animals and is now excited to get back to the educational promise the nonprofit set out to keep with the community.
Our goal is not only to save these amazing creatures, but also to educate the public about them.
Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
Newly released pictures from the U.S. Navy give us the closest look yet at the balloon that was shot down off the coast of South Carolina. The military claims it came from China and was used for surveillance. Pentagon officials say it's the latest in several spy balloons that have entered the airspace of the continental United States in recent years. A scary morning for passengers who took off from San Diego. 4 passengers were injured when a fire broke out shortly after a United flight took off for New Jersey. The airport says it was caused by a charging electronic device. As Ivan Rodriguez reports, this all happened as Congress was holding hearings on airline safety.
The aviation system is telling us something's wrong, and we need to listen.
Federal aviation officials on Capitol Hill Tuesday answering questions from lawmakers after 2 runway misses in 3 weeks in New York and Texas.
Southwest aboard. FedEx is on the go.
The panelists have legitimate concerns about predictability and agility of the FAA.
Funding for the FAA is up for reauthorization by Congress this year. The FAA says U.S. aviation continues to be the safest in the world, but they need more money for new technology, training, and hiring more pilots. Industry groups agree.
It takes constant improvement to get to be the best. It takes constant improvement to stay the best.
A major tool used to learn about aviation incidents and how to avoid them is the cockpit voice recorders. The National Transportation Safety Board told the committee that the voice recordings were unavailable from the near miss this weekend in Austin. Voice recorders in U.S. cockpits only hold 2 hours worth of data and continuously overwrite older data. The NTSB said they have continuously asked that the length be extended to 25 hours like European airlines.
And with this FAA reauthorization bill, we have an opportunity to remain the best, to constantly get better, to avoid complacency, and to make sure we never fall behind.
Ivan Rodriguez, KPBS News.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, the latest on the rescue efforts following the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Along with dryness, we're going to be talking about some warmth continuing right into Thursday for much of the coast and some of those interior valleys. Different story, though, for the mountains, and even some more changes coming up by the time we go into the weekend. Let's jump straight into it for tonight. Down into the mid to upper 30s around Oceanside. A couple of clouds around. Mid-40s, San Diego, Chula Vista down to 40. Borrego Springs, Mount Laguna down to 33 under a mostly clear sky. Futurecast shows little in the way of a cloud coverage, though. Pretty quiet indeed as we work our way right through Wednesday and into Thursday. There will still be some breezes coming out from the north and the east, impacting again the mountainous terrain. And it's going to be a little cooler there as opposed to some of those interior valleys and out of the coast. As I mentioned, some ice conditions here. There's high pressure. Think about the clockwise flow, so those winds are coming down from the north and the east. Temperature-wise, up to 70 now. San Diego, Chula Vista 72, Mount Laguna meanwhile into the upper 40s, Oceanside at 69. As we go to Thursday, cool and breezy again back throughout the far interior, the mountains on eastbound, but some of the interior valleys and the coast remaining quite warm. How warm? Well, check it out here at the coast. We're up into the 70s, so we can actually say that warmth's going to extend out into Friday. Changes by the weekend, turning cooler Saturday. High temperature dropping to 60, mid-60s on Sunday. Interior valleys, whoa, look at Thursday up to 81. Still mild on Friday into the upper 70s, but turning cooler by Saturday. Could even see some showers with our next weather maker later on this weekend. Talking about the mountainous terrain, now we're going to stay on the cool side over the next several days. Chilly and very cold air entering the picture perhaps late this weekend. Again, a tour of the desert, we're going to be experiencing some cooling as well as we go into Saturday and especially as we go into Sunday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Povick.
An NBA record many thought was out of reach might be broken tonight in L.A. LeBron James is just 36 points away from becoming the league's all-time leading scorer. The record has been held by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for nearly 40 years. Tip-off is set for 7 for the Lakers at home against Oklahoma City. Courtside tickets on the secondary market are going for nearly $50,000. It started in 1964 with the innovation of the Moog synthesizer. Throughout the rest of the 60s and the 70s, the generation of electronic music would take off. A leading pioneer is featured in a documentary airing tonight at 11 on KPBS television. And KPBS reporter John Carroll talked to the man behind the documentary on the remarkable career of Don Lewis.
There is a truth behind music that those of us who perform it sometimes find hard to swallow. It is, in fact, based on mathematics. Don Lewis loved music from the time he was a child, but he majored in electronics engineering at the former Tuskegee Institute before going into the Air Force as a nuclear weapons specialist. But when he got out, he answered his musical call.
Everybody had their own idea what their synthesizer should sound like.
He wanted to find a way to combine all the sounds made by individual synthesizers. He began in 1974. 3 years later, Leo, the live electronic orchestra, was born.
You know, I had stacks of keyboards on top, here and here on the side, and to me, it was a matter of pulling them all together.
Stacks of keyboards, an invention that's the ancestor to systems used in music production today. And you can see it at the Museum of Making Music in Carlsbad.
It was through the Museum of Making Music that I was introduced to Don Lewis. And it didn't take me too long after getting to know Don that I said, well, this might be the story I always thought needed to be told, because Don was the missing link, the personification of this technology.
Carlsbad's Ned Augustenborg is the producer, director, and editor of the documentary Don Lewis and the Live Electronic Orchestra. It shows you his place in the development of electronic music.
His whole concept was to be a live electronic orchestra.
Julie and Don Lewis were married for almost 45 years until Don's death late last year. He played in nightclubs in San Diego and in L.A. One night, the Beach Boys heard him and hired him as their opening act. He did a lot of studio session work with the likes of Quincy Jones, Marvin Hamlish, and Michael Jackson. But his passion was live performing. And Julie says Don was at his happiest when sharing music with an audience using his remarkable invention.
It's the way he thought, it's who he was. It was his manner of art.
Along the way, there were struggles. When Lewis was booked to perform at certain places in San Francisco, the Musicians Union local there objected and picketed against him.
This was very threatening to the union. They felt strongly that synthesizers were not real instruments.
But Lewis pushed forward. He worked for Roland Synthesizers and later for Yamaha, playing a major role in the development of the DX7, used by dozens of musicians during the 80s.
And you had to love him. You didn't have any choice, because you just feel the vibrations of his warmth and his desire to learn about you.
Don Lewis is one of those people who's worth getting to know, and that's what Ned Augustenborg's documentary does, opening a window into the life of a remarkable soul who left a legacy of sheer joy through music and his invention he used to make it.
I want to pass that baton to as many people as I possibly can. And that gives me great hope.
John Carroll, KPBS News.
And a reminder that KPBS will have live coverage of the State of the Union address, and it starts at 6, led by the team at PBS NewsHour. You can also live stream the speech at kpbs.org and listen live on KPBS FM. And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. We're just a few days from the Super Bowl, and for the first time, 2 black quarterbacks are starting for their teams. NPR's Morning Edition will have an update from Arizona and a talk with the author of the book Rise of the Black Quarterback. And Dr. Eric Topol joins KPBS Midday Edition for an update on the COVID-19 situation here in San Diego. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.